The Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate of Ncdmb is saddled with a mandate to monitor and enforce Nigerian content compliance on all projects, contracts, and services as outlined in the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act. How have they fared post-COVID-19? Stay with us to find out.
The role of the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board is to monitor and enforce Nigerian content compliance on all projects, contracts, and services relative to minimum set targets outlined in the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act.
The NOGIC Act and the government agency that arose from that act, which is the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, came as a result of an obvious gap between the requirements, which is global, the global requirements of the oil and gas industry in terms of skill, in terms of competencies, in terms of equipment, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of facilities, in terms of assets. So, as a result of that, the law was enacted to drive that, to put a structure behind it. And it's also created Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board. And you can see from the name, it's actually arranged in a form to reflect that line of thought. And the line of thought is that you talk about development before you talk about monitoring, because it's a gap. So you have to first and foremost develop, grow, close that gap. Then you now begin to talk about monitoring, compliance, and so on. And closely related to development is evaluation.
The Director, Monitoring and Evaluation, Ncdmb, Tunde Adelana, gives an overview of the Directorate.
All the surveys we do, all the data analysis that we do, all the data gathering that we do are all to establish a need, to establish a demand, to establish the justification for those activities. And we say, okay, fine. At this junction, we think we need a lot more petroleum engineers, we need a lot more inspectors, we need a lot more surveyors, we need a lot more drillers, we need a lot more divers, and so on and so forth. Or when you look at equipment, we need a lot more ROVs, we need a lot more drill bits, and so on and so forth. Or we need to establish those facilities in country. So that is basically where monitoring and evaluation actually comes in.
Speaking further, the Director, Monitoring and Evaluation, highlighted some of the Ncdmb programs that stem from the Directorate's activities.
For evaluation, you evaluate from time to time to establish trends, to establish demand profile, to establish those gaps. And then following that, you can then point to areas where we now say, okay, based on our findings, based on our conclusions, based on after having analyzed the data, our position is that we must develop in this area. And that's what brought about the idea of establishment of the oil and gas parks that we have in Emeya 1, Odupani, and of course that we plan to have in the entire oil producing area in the country. Apart from the parks, we're also looking at taking equity in most of these key areas that government have actually developed policies around in order to continually support government's effort to grow the local economy. And also we do capacity building interventions.
The Directorate is also responsible for monitoring and driving compliance with respect to the deployment of expatriates in the Nigerian oil and gas industry.
One of those key things we do is give approval for expatriates, which is one responsibility bestowed on Ncdmb as per Section 33 of the Act. Every expat who needs to work in this country must pass through the board. Because we recognize that the industry is a global industry, we also recognize that there's a gap in what we have in country and what is available and what is required globally. So how do we check that such that our people who has that capability and ability will continue to play without hindrance? And that's why we get involved in the process. We carry out a lot of analysis. We ensure that our people are considered first, and where there are skills in country, we don't unnecessarily bring in skills from outside the country. All of that, and basically based on those applications, we also analyze the trend of application. So if we get a lot of more application in a particular area, that means we have to focus our attention to develop Nigerians in that area such that they can take over those challenges.
Adelana also explained the rationale behind the board's third-party monitoring mechanism.
Ncdmb is a very young company, young organization, barely 11 years old, compared to a lot of companies that have been there for decades. We've achieved so much because we do not pretend to be the masters of all. The third-party monitoring, first and foremost, is an action supported by the law, Logic Act, something the board is empowered to do. And I think the proponents of the law, the drafters of the law, recognize the fact that there could be challenges of personnel, challenges of time, challenges of knowledge and skills, and so on. And there could be some experts out there in the field that you could call in to support you. So our aim was work with experts. And then it would now form like a training ground for our personnel. And I tell you, in the 2 years that we've been on this, the quality of the ground staff has tremendously gone up.
Accur's Solution Subsidy Training Center is another project the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate is involved with.
There was a project, the Airnaut, and on the back of that project, we extracted a commitment from Accur Solution to build a subsidy academy in Bayelsa. Specifically, I must tell you, today the project is about 99% completed and will be commissioned very soon. Talking about the impact of this project, it's a subsidy academy, basically, and it's an academy of global standard. We believe citing it here, first and foremost, is the proximity to the local community. We also believe that it's long overdue. We need to begin to have facilities of this nature in the local oil producing community, and it's significant. One, Bayelsa is the homestead of oil and gas, where you remember Oloibiri. Then again is a seat of Ncdmb, you know. So it's significant in that sense. So you bring the training facility close by, people can then begin to tap into it. And then in another 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to have a lot of skilled personnel in this area. Aside from that, the industry can also benefit. We are bringing training facilities that were hitherto organized outside Nigeria, home, and not just home, but we are bringing it local.
The role of the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate of Ncdmb is vital in the implementation of the provisions of the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act.